You okay? Yeah, you're good. Okay. Morning, everyone. Thanks for joining. So this month we have another special guest interview. It's one of my dearest friends in tea, Miss Cynthia Fazeksas from Adagio Teas. Before we get started, I just wanted to give a little introduction. Maybe some of you might be new who are watching today. So my name is Suze. Being Tea is the name of my education company, and it's also the name of an online program I have for tea education that allows anybody, whether they are working in the tea trade like Cynthia and I, or just dedicated enthusiasts, anybody who's curious about learning about tea, to take classes in tea online at your own pace, any order that you want. It's not like an A to Z, you have to do all these. It's like anything that you want to learn. It's classes in learning about tea and how to brew it and cupping exercises and all kinds of cool nerdy stuff like that. And it's also classes in learning how to look at tea through the lens of meditation and mindfulness too. So something a little bit more well-being centered that looks at the cultural aspect of tea and how it's classically been used for mindfulness practice. So you get to take classes in both, which is really cool. It's an online membership program, so it's a low monthly fee. You can take as many classes as you want, and new ones are posted every single month, which is, I realized, a lot of new stuff that I have to make all the time. It gets kind of crazy, but it's really fun. The program's been going for over 2.5 years now, so it's pretty awesome. If you're curious, sign up and get more information at patreon.com/beingtea. So Patreon is the name of the host that this platform operates on, and Being Tea is where you will find me. And of course, you can also find me on Instagram at Being Tea, if that's not already how you might have found me today. Without further ado, I'm going to invite Miss Cynthia on screen here. And so we can get the good time started. And also, I need to get some of these teas brewing that she has sent me. Oh, yes, so much tea. I'm like loaded up with different teas over here from Cynthia. So exciting. Did I hit the button? Did I do it right? Yes, I did. Okay. So while Cynthia is getting connected, oh, there she is. Yay. Can you hear me?
Hear me?
Yes, I can.
We have always nice.
Always nice. Always nice when it's a little bit easier. Thank you for all of these teas. These are so rad.
I don't know.
Rad is the word for it, but it's early on a Saturday, and it's the first word that comes to mind for me. So
rad works. I think rad totally works.
Yes. What are you drinking this morning?
Well, I'm still living the dream of our Vietnamese trip. So I am sipping some of that beautiful silver needle white tea that I was able to acquire while I was there, and bring back like a pack rat. And and I'm on my second infusion, and it's lovely. But this morning, it's funny because the interesting thing about these Vietnamese teas is that I feel like every time I do another session with them, I'm getting notes that I didn't get initially or in the last session. So this morning I'm getting a lot of citrus, almost like a lemongrass, which it's subtle, but it's just kind of something different that I wasn't experiencing. So I don't know if it's my palate, if it's a Cynthia issue, or if it's just something else this wonderful tea has to offer.
I've noticed something similar with those teas too, and it seems like every single time I'm working with them, they're a little bit different.
That's cool.
Which I really like. Yeah, and they respond to really subtle differences in the change in the brewing. Like I have learned that I think for a lot of them, at least the kind of lighter ones like the white teas and the green teas, they tend to like the first maybe even like 3 infusions on the shorter side.
Yeah.
Because of that, sort of woodsy smokiness that's there. And then after that, I go longer, and you get like these kind of veggie, like fruity notes that are coming out, which is really nice.
Yeah, I remember when we were doing that session of the green in the hotel room in the, like in the village center part of Hoang Su Phi, and we were cupping that green, and and the third infusion, the smokiness kind of drifts off. It's not really there anymore. And then we were left with this, like you said, it's like it's like a fruitiness that's really different than other greens that I've had, where, you know, traditionally from like Fujian, you're going to get like this dry white grape as sort of the predominant note. But you know, with this one, it was something else. It was like, you know, like it's just like it whispers things at you. So it's a tea that demands attention almost constantly while you're having it, because it's telling you like, okay, now there's a little lychee. Now there's a little green apple. Now there's, you know, there's a nuttiness happening. And then, you know, sometimes in almost all of them, I've gotten that, that delicate lotus seed note that you and I were in love with. And it doesn't stay, but it definitely appears. It's just wild. And it just makes each of these such a fun trip. So I thought, I figured you'd be cupping the, you know, the master's teas. So, you know, I figured I would have the Vietnam to keep it topical.
Nice. Well, thanks for coming back, and for, you know, nerding out on tea again with me here.
Always happy to. It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So I thought a really cool thing to talk about this morning would be these new teas. So the master's teas, and also just kind of how that relates to, you know, like life as a, you know, part of your life as a tea explorer. And then also part of your life is, you know, blending teas and managing teas and managing a really, really big program. And I think people will be curious to know more about how one does that and how you balance that. You know, there's this idea of what tea work must be like that we see on Instagram. And then there's here's how you manage all of the rest of the stuff that makes that possible. And, you know, one thing that I really find really fascinating with like the master's teas is that this is like, it's part of Adagio, but it's a separate endeavor. You know, it's got its own website and its own, you know, branding, and the teas are different and everything. And so it exists side by side with the main company. And yet you do both things. Like you still handle both.
Yeah.
So I think that's really cool, because it demonstrates that, you know, wonderful complexity about tea, that it can be so many things all at once. And for a lot of people who are really in it, it is multiple things at once.
Yeah, that's very true. And, you know, my tea evolution really started, you know, super organically, where I'd always been a tea drinker. My body just can't handle coffee, even though I love the smell of it and the richness. I just can't handle it. So growing up, tea was always in the house. It was always an option. It was always that thing that you turn to when you're chilly, you don't feel well, you need to discuss something, you know, like it was always just that constant companion. And then as I became an adult, you know, it stayed with me, and, you know, and I infected other people with it. But, you know, I think my first aha moment really that there was, there were probably multiple aha moments, but the one that sticks with me was when I was in Quechee, Vermont, of all places, at the Simon Pierce, restaurant. They have a wonderful, like, glass blowing business there. And they have this wonderful restaurant, and their iced tea, it was summer, it was hot, was a ginger peach black tea. And you know, I was like, what is this? And so you know, I found out that it was Republic of Tea, who was really sort of a pioneer with that sort of level up at that time. And it was really hard to even know about any of these other teas. And that was when I was like, wow, this can be so much better than what I've been drinking and, you know, surviving on. I say that now, but, you know, but, so I remembered that, that part of my roots always. So when I'm dealing with the teas that, you know, people who are really into specialty high-end teas might see the teas that we work with at Adagio on an everyday basis as almost like candy teas or, you know, whatever, but there's somebody's stepping stone, and there's somebody's everyday tea, and there's somebody's comfort, and they're a heck of a lot of fun. To me, it's always like saying, oh, well, I want a big gourmet meal, but, you know, my dessert can be like, you know, something, you know, rock candy or whatever. You know, if it's still on someone's menu, it should still be the best possible thing it could be. So, you know, as a tea nerd, it's great to have me there because I am super stubborn about quality. And I will dig in my heels, and I've delayed shipments, and you know, and I've done all those things to protect teas that maybe some other companies would dumb down a little bit more than we do. And then you know, I never thought we would get to do something like Master's Tea because you know, we're looking for that market that wants something a level up. They want whatever their product to be really good, but you know, obviously when Teavanas were being closed, we saw a huge opportunity and we had to pounce on that. And so we didn't want to lose our street cred. And, you know, and so
we're just trying to help customers, we're not trying to like completely undo everything we've already been doing.
Exactly. So we wanted to, you know, we wanted to be welcoming in that regard, but we also wanted to, you know, stay true to our roots. You know, these fun teas, these blend teas, you know, we have something, I don't know, like 10 Earl Greys, because, you know, that's someone's benchmark of quality. So we have to have that on every line. And so, you know, and so when we are talking about, you know, leveling up and accommodating those people, we want to make sure that we're still accommodating what we're truly passionate about. And these teas help us you know, maintain our, you know, our place in the market where we can take risks like Master's Tea. And, you know, to me, I was like, I hope it succeeds, but if it doesn't, I got to try all these really awesome things, you know? And I mean, my rejects from, you know, from this project were just as amazing as some of these things. So it's like, when we think about, you know, rejected teas, like, we think that, you know, like, oh, you know, it's a terrible thing, rejected. It's like, no, it's wonderful. It just wasn't the top tier of what we were able to acquire in those samples from that, you know, and this actually started last fall. It started about a year ago. So, you know, I was worried then about what we were trying, but it was fine because we were just establishing the artisan. We were saying, all right, this is what they have at the end of their year. So whatever they have in spring is going to be awesome sauce. And so indeed, it was awesome sauce.
The Wangshan Maofang is just like, oh my gosh. And like also just the leaves are so beautiful on these. So, you know, one thing we were talking about before is for you guys to be able to handle some of these teas as a company, you know, even just that involved some different mindset and some education on the part of like people in the warehouse. Like, for example, like the Taiping Hokui, which arrived like just really beautifully. I mean, hardly anything broken, just the nice whole leaves, right? And, you know, you have folks who had never seen a tea like that. And so, you know, there had to be some discussion on how you handle some of these really fragile, super, super beautiful teas, because they must arrive like this. That's part of the enjoyment of it.
Yeah, I remember when I was cupping that tea and I was over the moon for it. And so, you know, I was like a mama bear. I was like, raw, no one mess with my leaves. And so I reached out to our production chief because he needed to know what was coming, and he needed to know that it was going to require special care. And I'm sure that he had, you know, we still do, you know, we have a lot of automation in our warehouse. You know, we had to because of the volume of so much. I mean, you know, knock on wood, we're super lucky when it comes to that. But we also still have these fabulous ladies that do a lot of hand packing, especially with the, you know, the initial master series that we launched like something like 8 years ago. And so, so I called him and I was like, yeah, we have this tea coming, you know, and so I think I had this conversation with him probably in like November, right before holiday season like hit in full force. And I was just like, these leaves are big. I'm telling you, they're big. They're really, really big leaves, and they needed to change me. You know, I understood that I needed to repeat myself and to make sure that I was clear. You know, months go by. We get the spring sample. I'm still over the moon. I can't believe that I have the opportunity to even cup these teas, much less offer them, you know, through my company. And And so the leaves come in, and I forgot to kind of, touch on it again and tell him, like, look, the giant leaves are coming. This is how it is. I don't know how you're going to get it into a pouch, but they show up, and then he's just like, what is with these leaves? I tried to warn
you. It's like delicately sliding them in the envelope is basically how you have to handle them.
Yeah, one of the ladies there is so awesome. And so they, the ladies that do this for us are fabulous. And they do treat the leaves with the utmost care. And so I was so nervous about that tea. So it's funny that you ask. I mean, it's like, it looks like a lady's fan. It looks like super delicate feathers. It looks like, and when you look really close, you can see how they press them. It has the indentations of the, the screen that they use to press them. And my goodness. And then, you saw my shaky hand video of me trying to get them into my little
you gotta let it melt in there. Like you just add water and let it melt, and then
that's probably an important brewing tip if anyone does try that tea, is like, don't crack them to get them into the pot.
This is not ramen, guys.
Yeah. You just want to like put them in the hot water and let the hot water sort of work on the lower part of the leaf, and then gently use the lid to sort of scoot them in. And that way you can keep them intact and not, let them do their thing. And oh my goodness, I hadn't, we when our tasting season comes, it's so much involved in what we had the previous year and looking for consistency and quality and, and price. And so when we are looking at, I don't often get to go back to things that maybe I had when I was starting off my tea career back with specialties, because we had a lot of things there where we would get things passing through. And, we had this wonderful Taiping Hue, and it was just not like this. So it was much shorter. It was still a beautiful leaf, but it was not at the level that this is up to. And, I was just over the moon. And I still am. I'm probably hoarding a few samples myself till next spring, and then I'll like part with them, Tea hoarding.
So when you're looking at like buying these teas, I think something that's an interesting point for context for folks is sometimes I think there's this idea that large scale tea producers only produce large scale tea producers, and small scale tea producers only produce small scale tea.
Oh yeah.
There's not the idea that, some really special small lot teas like this could come from somebody who is also a main supplier for you for something else. And this is just kind of either a pet project or an experiment for them. And some of them could also come from someone who that is the only tea that they make, like it's just very small batches of that. And, they're only able to sell very small quantities. So
yeah,
talk a little bit about like just some of the available quantity differences, like that discussion that you have when looking at a collection like this. Some that are, this is all that's made, and some that it's like, this is actually a very sort of prestigious small quantity made by one of your already existing tea suppliers.
Yeah, and that's truly the reason why I never thought we would be able to do this, because the lots are so small. You can't make a huge batch of a giant leaf tea like that. It's just,
no.
You get like a few days worth of a plucking that you might use for one, or it might be a 1 day's plucking, depending on the weather, and, 90% depending on the weather and depending on that individual artisan's take on producing that tea, which is as unique to that farmer as it is to an artist. Where, everyone knows how to draw a house, but, the farmer might say, well, this is my version of the house. And, the other farmer's like, no, I'm going to make the house this way. And, or it needs this. And it's the same thing with these very small productions, and I would say that even our larger producers of tea are excited about this project because they understand what we're doing. They're happy to provide the larger teas, the larger quantity teas. But even yesterday, I received a beautiful sample from one of our regular, basically our Taiwan conduit of, we bring in this Formosa oolong that is, what we use as a base for our flavored oolongs at Adagio Prime, as I call it. And they sent me this beautiful sample of this super small lot. They know the farmer, they're making the connection for us. And so they're saying, it's from Taidong and it's a red oolong. And I was like, all right, yeah. So I was like, all right, let me have it. And it was, again, I was having that situation where, it's such a fine production. It's so small, we have to make our decision quickly. And I was so impressed with the complexity, and every sip was really presenting something else. And so with the master's teas, we can get away with this. We can say, this is literally all we have of this tea. We're bringing in, somewhere between 10 and 50 kilos of a particular lot, all that they have, or, maybe half of it, depending on the expense of it, or depending on, the fragility of the tea or whatever, like how long will it last? Will we be able to get through it? And we're still learning about that secondary process where, getting the word out there for something like this takes a lot longer, especially if it's associated with Adagio, because people might not think, they might be, oh, sure, Adagio, we see your chocolate truffle tea, we see your white blueberry, but, it's this stuff is legit. And, I think in another season or so, we will get a better idea of how much to bring in of these. And, but I feel like the specialty tea, it's on the upswing. For me, it's always been there. It's always been, a personal event for me, as for you. These are just things that we like, but there haven't been a lot of people in my personal circle who, they get what I do now on the mainstream level, but they don't necessarily get like these super complex teas. So, like hanging out with our tea friends in Vietnam, and the same thing happened to me in Japan, whenever you go to Origin, and the tea culture there is just so vastly different, and it's totally normal to sit with someone and do like multiple infusions of, gong fu cha, and, seeing that increase as a recreation for people is super exciting, so I believe that what we're doing not only, is fun for me, but I feel like it has some tenure. It might, it's never going to be like the big money maker, but that's fine. It's bringing these things to light. It's showing the farmers. It's, saying, look, this isn't, I think when we first launched the site, someone mentioned on our Facebook page that they didn't want to be part of that life, because to them, these were luxury teas. And I was, that stung, because that's not what this is about at all. It's about showing someone who has, probably generations of this, this amazing skill to get the best from these leaves that grow like where their family lives, and presenting them to the world, saying, this is beautiful. We were able to bring this for you. We were, and in doing so, we're helping this farmer sustain their way of life and their art, so to speak. And so it's not about the luxury aspect from our perspective. It's about enjoying what, this artisan has been able to produce. And, and they just didn't learn it last week, like they are, these skills are generally handed down from generation to generation. And, and so much has to do with where they live and where these teas grow. And, it's so unique to each side of the mountain where it grows, or to that family's, or we can equate it to, pasta sauce, like everyone knows how to make spaghetti sauce, but every family has their own take on it. So, there's never, when you're at this level tea wise, you're not getting the same tea twice. I mean, we're not getting the same tea twice per session or per infusion. And, that's, what they say, diversity is the spice of life, right? That's a thing, right?
Yeah, I think so. It should be a thing.
I think so. It is a thing. So, so to me, that being able to bring that to people who, who already appreciate it and who have a love of it, and then to perhaps enlighten those who are seeking that from life. I think that, there are things in life that are life enhancing, and tea is one of them, in any form. but tea on this level it's a spectacle.
Yeah, and you bring up a really good point too, in that I also occasionally run into folks who just assume certain types of teas are automatically more expensive. I was teaching on a retreat last weekend for 4 days, and in one of the sessions that we were working with, I hadn't even mentioned at all price or where I got some of the teas that I work with in my classes. And someone just mentioned something about, they probably wouldn't always like the idea of always working with really, really super expensive teas like this. And I was like,
Right.
I didn't say anything about that. And if you're curious, let me look up the prices on some of them. And like one of them I looked up that everyone really enjoyed was this tea Kuan Yin. It was in a 4-ounce pouch. Because when I teach, I actually don't show where any of the teas come from afterward if people want to talk about that, or I email and just provide a general list of who I work with. So of course Adagio is on that list of who I work with, but we don't make it about like selling, right? But I was like, since you're curious and you want to know, I'm like, this 4-ounce bag was $15. I'm like, that is, come on, we're not talking about something that is the most expensive bottle of wine.
Exactly.
So it's like relative. And then you talk about price per serving and things like that. And even some of the finest teas in the world's best quality teas, like price per serving is still less than a bottle of water at the store. It's still less than $1 per serving. At most you're going to get like some matchas and things like that is like $2 per serving, so it's like, a bigger bottle of water, and not that you would drink that like all day, every day, but still it's not at all, I think, what might be assumed. And this person made that assumption just purely because we're talking about these teas in such a very thoughtful way where we're paying attention to them and noticing the beauty of it. And we're talking about how they're made. And that was just the assumption. It's like, oh gosh, this must be really expensive. No, doesn't have to.
I think people do that with wine as well. And you can get a really good complex bottle of wine very inexpensively, and there are so many great deals in tea. One of it depends on your level. It depends on what your palate wants that day. It depends on if you have a head cold, obviously you don't want to have anything that's super hard to get or rare, regardless of price, because you want to make sure that you're ready and able to manage that enjoyment. Yeah.
Like, what the hell?
But we've always said in the tea industry that tea is one of the most affordable luxuries, and I'm using the word luxury now. It's because people shouldn't assume that something that is delicious or complex or can really just kind of, if my world was rocked by a ginger peach in like 1995, like imagine now, imagine that there are people on that path who have no idea. So, they could go to, a company like Adagio or like Harney's or wherever, and kind of, go in at that entry level where they're trying something. If it's just Earl Grey, that's totally cool. That's totally cool. It could be just a honey bush with added vanilla, whatever. If it makes you happy, put it in your cup, have that moment, explore. That's, I think that's really what it's all about. And then, when you get to these awesome sessions, the complete opposite is where you're a bunch of crazed tea people in Vietnam. And we're all having like these like amazing sessions, and we're talking about the nuances, and everybody's getting something, different, or we're getting the shared experience, and we're talking about the experience, and we're all excited because of what this unique experience is bringing to us. The experiences on the palate, the experiences with the companions, the experience is being in some place we've never been before under, sometimes trying circumstances, but but I think that it's clear that some of us would go to the ends of the earth for a really amazing cup of tea, and anyone who's just entering this needs to find out why. Why?
Like, who are those people who do that?
And should I be doing it? Like if you are leveling up your chocolate practice, from, there's like Hershey's, nothing wrong with Hershey's, but there are all these other levels of quality chocolate, it's good to get out of what you know you like to try something that you may or may not like, because you don't know what you're missing until you try it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think, a big part of that too is just its connection to our sensory self. So many of us spend a lot of our time in our average workday or home life just really not connected to our bodies. Like we're sitting at a desk or just doing a thing, and we may not move very much. We may not get up. We're pretty sedentary, and by the nature of that, we're not connected to sensory wise what's happening.
Yeah.
So when you find something that excites the senses, that gets you to be curious about both your external as well as your internal world again, that's really healthy. Like that's one of the most affordable forms of self-care that you can possibly do. And so whether it's chocolate or it's tea, like that's a really healthy thing. It's restoring this nice balance that we lose in our busy modern life.
That's so true. And I think you're excellent at that, because you are so good at reading your body, reading your mind, and figuring out what it is it wants in any moment. And then the beauty of that is that you're willing to share it. So if someone happens to be sharing a room with Suzette on a super hot, challenging, trip to Origin, she'll just like pop out oatmeal, and all of a sudden she has oatmeal. Or she has some other goodie, or she picks up, one of our new tea friends, who has some kind of a boo-boo, and she basically has everything. But it's so true. I think that in our busy lives, and my week is a marathon, of it's all tea stuff. But like you said, there's like that meme. It's like what my friends think I do in tea, what the world thinks I do in tea, what I actually do in tea.
Can we make that meme of like the little 9 square, like what my mom thinks I do, what my friends think I do, my husband thinks I do, what I actually do.
Yeah, I'm like whipped beef and like flower petals, fruit pieces, flavor vials, trying to make it all work. And then, like, oh my gosh, this red oolong just came in, like, oh, let me go cut that, like everything else stops, because now I have to know what this is all about. And it's a small lot, so I have to hop on it, get, notes in, typed up, sent to my boss. And, and I noticed this morning when I logged on that our acceptance of the tea was sent to Taiwan. So coming soon. So, but yeah, it's cool to say the least.
So, with the master's teas, when most of these, like the turnaround time to get them was pretty quick, which is also probably something logistically new for you guys to manage in that kind of way with that many teas. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I think that people probably don't realize what it takes to actually get the tea from the farm to them, and how that changes depending on the origin you're talking about, and the amount you're bringing in, and the time of year, and the way that it has to be, it has to exit that country. Like that's just that's bonkers.
It is bonkers. And so what traditionally happens is that, we are filling container loads of tea. We'll use China as an example because it's by far our biggest supplier. And so, the short version is that harvest season comes, and, it may be running late, it may be running early based on what Mother Nature is doing at origin. And, like I said, we don't really cut corners on quality. So we have to wait for Mother Nature. And so samples come from origin. They initially get sort of reviewed at Adagio, and like things that we would never possibly buy get filtered out so I don't lose my mind. Then they get sent to me. I work remotely.
Because it's a lot, there's just thousands of types of tea, and you're like, no, I honestly don't want to taste the thousands. I want you to limit this down.
Yes, Michael's really good about that. And so I'll get a batch, a box of samples from origin, and it could be anywhere from 1 to maybe half a dozen of that particular tea. And so I have to cup that against last year's sample, and which has changed. It has changed from last year, so it's not a one-on. So the experience of knowing how teas typically change in the course of a year, plus how they should taste coming out of origin. What's the standard for that tea? All is like computing in my head as I go through multiple cups and tasting things under, you know, we have to move quickly because we're not the only ones who want these teas. You know, I mean, it's other tea companies in the U.S. It's, you know, it's Europeans. You know, the Germans are super like big on getting teas, and they're fast. So
and they also get them quicker because they're just geographically closer. So like the samples arrive to them first, which is not fair.
Yes. So when I know teas are when I know that samples are coming, I have to like clear my schedule and pounce on that stuff. And I'm replacing, you know, the word stuff for something else because I am on it. And so you know, basically I drop what I'm doing and I dedicate myself to getting these done in record amount of time, which means that I get hyper caffeinated, but that's a whole other story. And so then we go through all these samples. You know, we you know, like when we are buying anything that's a base for our flavored teas, it is like I think our green tea is somewhere between half and 3/4 of a 40-foot container of tea.
Good God.
Yeah. And so
a lot of tea.
You know, we have to pack it in with other things. So as I'm approving samples, you know, or not, if I approve them, then we make the purchase, we secure that lot. Or if I reject it, we, you know, send it back to Lydia, my colleague in China, who helps us with all of our sourcing on site. So, you know, to help obviously control quality. And so then we fill a container. We have multiple containers that come, and then we ship that to the US, and it has to like, you know, go by water on a big container ship that hopefully doesn't end up in like rough seas, you know. And, you know, whenever I hear about a container ship getting lost at sea, I'm like, you know, like, no, you know, worst fear. But in comparison, with these master teas, it's really about, we get a lot. It's usually, like I said, somewhere between 10 and 50 kilos. We approve a lot, and we are flying that stuff from origin to Adagio HQ in New Jersey. So it's usually the whole process is usually soup to nuts within 2 weeks. So we're getting the tea as fresh as humanly possible to, you know, to appear on our stores and to appear on the website. And so when we, this year, Mother Nature was bright and sunny, a little bit on the early side. So our team kind of thought we had a little bit more time to get the website ready and all of that. And so the teas started coming, and we had to get websites up, we had to get photos done. And then I was, you know, this starts, and so I'm starting to do the Adagio Prime tea sampling, and then these teas as well. And now, you know, we had to, you know, I needed to get like, you know, how many infusions? You know, we didn't need that previously for Adagio. I mean, we did, you know, like you can estimate, you can get like a decent, you know, Longjing and say, all right, this is probably good for 4 or 5 infusions, you know, but I didn't have to do those infusions to be positive. I just knew because of experience and, you know, the world and past history. But this time we had to be on it because we are selling it to people who are super likely to do multiple infusions. And so we had to do that, and we had to take a lot of photos, and, you know, I had to provide descriptions because I'm the only one who had tried them at that point. And, you know, we had to hope to hell that it would all work. So, you know, so it was a little bit crazy, and, but crazy in a good way. And our social media manager, Ashley, is fabulous because I had to give her a crash course in all things tea. And, you know, she had been a tea drinker, of course, and she was, you know, doing a fabulous job with our social media. But she, you know, I was like, okay, here's what you need to know, you know?
Yeah, like this is like a whole different thing with this family, you know?
Yeah, different teas, different conversation, different audience. So we really, like, she really, I'd say that she handled it super well. And now she's converted. You know, she's just like, I want to be a tea master. I'm like, yeah, that's right. Yeah, you do. So unfortunately for her, she's now down the rabbit hole. Yeah, she's down the rabbit hole. So she's, you know, she's doing gong fu in the office, and, you know, she's as smitten as we are. And, you know, I was able to get her some of the teas that we got back from Vietnam. So, we're actively trying to work with finding a couple suitable vendors and iron out the logistics of that. And, hopefully, because she's smitten. She was, it's hilarious. She comes on Slack and all of a sudden she's just like talking like a mile a minute about like nuance and what she's getting from them. And I'm like, and what else? And what else? And then she's like, what should I be getting? And it's just really awesome. So, it's really nice to see. It's nice when you're able to spark that in someone else, and it's nice to see that light go on, for sure.
Yeah, that is really sweet. So you mentioned the like photography and descriptions and things like that. So one thing that I wanted to chat with you about too, I often get a lot of questions about, where to get good tea. Almost any workshop that I'm doing, or like where to go get tea. And I think most of the time they're expecting that I will name a physical location. And especially if I'm, in a city that might have some, I can suggest that. But more often than not, I'm telling people to go online. And I still need folks who are surprised by that answer. And so I kind of have to qualify it a little bit and share that, like maybe 10 years ago, there were just like sort of a handful of people who were selling online, but now it's become a lot more common. And I always stipulate, like, by online, I don't mean like going to Amazon and getting it. I mean, like, go to a tea company and get it online.
Yeah.
And here's why: because you can get such specificity of quality and so many different origins that you can get stuff from companies who are specialists, and you can get stuff from companies who have like a really broad sense of being able to offer a lot of things. So like Adagio or Tea Source or Camellia sinensis, right? So you're in pretty good hands. So, I know Adagio was, you could say like arguably one of the very first companies to start selling tea online in 1999. And
absolutely.
So over the years, you guys have really developed a repertoire for being able to interact with people in that way. And then more so even now, I think, take it to this new level with Master's Teas because it's so specialty. I'm curious, just like what lessons have you learned about what helps people be more comfortable buying online, and particularly people who are really discerning or people who are looking for something super special? I mean, like this Malfang, like what do folks like that need to know, and what makes them a little bit more comfortable?
What makes them comfortable absolutely is talking about where it comes from. Saying, all right, this comes from here. I think one thing in the tea world that we all worry about is things that are counterfeit, things that are claiming to be from place A, but they're really, really not. They're like not high grown on the mountain, or they're not, like your Longjing isn't from Hangzhou. Like I think things like that are what make tea people really skeptical. And then the other thing is, everyone's had that instance where they have purchased something they thought would be fabulous and it was lackluster. And when we were doing research for Master's Teas, I was really surprised by some of the things that we did cup from other places that, I just felt like weren't stored well. Lovely tea probably at the outset, or it was out of standard for the tea. And so that to me was, I bumped into a lot of that, and that, that kind of put me in that consumer mode where I was like, oh boy, so, but, saying specifically where this tea comes from, if, and providing like data about who is growing it, I think really helps. And then even, way in the early days when I was working with specialties and we had a little catalog and, we had to be super descriptive. And so my training back then about, my training for writing copy for websites was, concurrent with my learning tea words, like learning the tea vocabulary, learning to talk about what's in the cup, and how it is on your palate, and building that. It all happened at the same time. So I think that being able to describe the tea accurately and manages the consumer's expectation of what they're going to have. You're always going to run into those people who just can't detect it. Their palate isn't there yet, or their brain, their language and their palate haven't learned to communicate yet. And then you're always going to get those people who like, you know, oh, I hate this kind of tea, but I bought it anyway and I still hate it. So you're going to get, you know, you're going to get that. But, you know, I think that those are the things. And then in our case, you know, I was adamant about the leaf photos and, you know, especially with social media, you know, making sure like we're showing like up close, this is what the leaf looks like, you know, when it starts, this is what it looks like when, you know, after it's infusing, because that's where I think us, you know, the collective, we as tea nerds, you know, we have that, okay, I believe you moment, you know, when we see like a 4-inch, like Taiping Hao and, you know, we see it melting into the pot, or we see what it looks like after it's infused. That's when we're like, I see. Now you've got my, you know, you're working on my trust. I'm starting to feel a little bit more confident in you. And so, you know, and then
that's such a huge point too, because I've definitely seen on websites where I can tell the photos have been altered. They've been altered or they've been color corrected. And especially like green teas, because there's like this bluish hue around the outside edge that tells you that it was color corrected. It was not actually that green. It was actually more yellow, and they didn't do a very good job in Photoshop cleaning that up.
No. That bugs me too.
When you see the start to finish, you're like, okay, we're actually really talking about this tea.
That's so true. You know, the funny thing, to me, like, it's always funny how the universe will sort of sort things out for you. And back in February, I had received a gift from my better half that was like a little like Swarovski figurine. And there was a free gift that came along with that was like those clip-on type lenses for your phone. And one of them was a macro lens. And you know what, I'm also a nerd about photography. And so I was more fascinated with the free gift than with the actual gift. So Scott was like not really pleased with me, but I was like
a cat that just wants to play with the box.
That's exactly his metaphor. He's like, you're like a cat. I can just give you a box and you'd be happy. I'm like, no, you give me a lens and I'm happy. But I was able to use this macro lens. I'm like, I don't think anyone's doing that. I don't think anyone is taking these macro photos of tea leaves, you know, or at least if they were, like, it didn't come across. And if, you know, apologies to anyone who already did that. But I just had fun doing that literally in my kitchen where I had really good morning light, you know, and, you know, trying to get as many photos done before I had to start the meat of my day, and getting as close to the leaf as possible and just making the leaf the hero. You know, and like, you know, then you run into the problems where you're super close to the leaf and like steam is hitting the camera, and, you know, now it's all foggy, and, you know, and, but that was a lot of fun. But I knew that, you know, seeing was believing in that regard. And so we had to share the leaf. And then, you know, the final component, and arguably one of the most important when you're selling tea or when you're into anything. And, you know, you must have seen the movie Tommy Boy, right? With Chris Farley and David Spade. And, you know, the thing about Tommy Boy is it's about selling. And regardless of anyone who's selling anything, anywhere, you know, people are buying you as much as they're buying that product. So what needs to happen is that whether you're selling brake pads or whether you're selling really fine teas, is that your passion for the product needs to come through. And when it comes to tea, we get all hopped up in caffeine and L-theanine. So our passion will come through pretty crazily and wonderfully. And so we had to have a little bit of that in there, you know. And so it was important for me. And I always kept my social media super separate from Adagio because I just wanted the peace. I didn't want that, you know, coming in. But in this case, I felt like, is that a luff call? And I just,
oh, good.
Okay. I just really wanted my passion for these teas to assist, you know, to sort of assist in what we were doing and kind of say, you know, all right, look, this is who I am. And, you know, I'm not kidding. This stuff is really good. And please, you know, like I wanted to support the endeavor as much as possible because obviously for some slightly selfish reasons, I want access to these teas always, you know, but also because, you know, I felt like, you know, they deserve it. The artisans who make these teas deserve to have the person who selected them say, look, this is really good, and here's why I wanted it, and here's why, you know, I insisted on it, and this is a great opportunity for you know, tea people to, you know, to have a reliable company offer something that isn't you know, isn't something to worry about. We stand behind what we do. We stand behind our products, and you know, and it's, you know, I'm super psyched to be able to get them myself. So sharing them is everything about tea. You know, tea's super uniting. You know, on our trip we had people from Ukraine, Russia, you know, Korea, Taiwan, France, you know, and you know, Australia, of course, and so you know, all these lines that humanity draws across the globe become blurred, and they mean nothing when we're sitting there having wonderful rounds of tea, or, you know, I mean, just watching the excitement of our companions. Like, you know, we get into a tea factory, and there people are like in the leaves, and they're like running around, and they're, you know, the passion really is the glue. And you know, it's a wonderful thing to get into if you're not familiar with specialty tea, or if you're just looking at this interview like, these ladies are crazy. Try some, trust us.
Yeah. Well, and actually, like, you know, what you say about getting your own voice involved, you know, like so many of us have, you know, this kind of separation between the work that we do and then us personally. And then sometimes, you know, depending on either it's a project, or it's an avenue of our work, or it's a new endeavor, you know, that line softens a lot. And I know for me, that's something that I've personally really navigated over the last few years of, you know, I've had Being Tea for 4 years now. And that line has really been something that I've navigated carefully. And I think that people, they sense that when it's you and you're putting yourself on the line. And like you say, you're saying, no, these teas, like I wouldn't just be over here going, rah, 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 tea, you know, if it wasn't like really this one that was so good and so important that you felt you needed to share that with folks. I think that really comes through. And that, I think, is, you know, in talking about how you sell tea online and how we make those connections online, that has to come through. You know, that voice of somebody really is tasting this and taking photos of it and writing about it. Because if I sense that it's just an Amazon description, I don't get that.
No. And, you know, and to be clear, I'm as passionate about our least expensive tea as I am about our most expensive tea. And, you know, I do end up writing a lot of the copy, or if not, then I'm at least feeding my tasting notes to someone else. And, you know, I'm super psyched about our chocolate truffle tea, because, you know, that, you know, that's the thing that can get you through a long winter's night, or, you know, I really shouldn't be having any more, you know, like actual chocolate today, or I need to watch the sugar, so I'm going to have this instead. But, you know, I was just always really hesitant to kind of like put myself out there, because, you know, the mass consumer can be a little vicious. But, you know, it's, I'm okay with it. You know, I'm okay with it now. And, you know, I love what I do. I'm super lucky to get to do this. So whether I'm putting a bunch of like herbs together to make some kind of concoction that's going to help somebody sleep better, or if I'm, you know, finding one of the most exquisite, you know, teas that's growing on Alishan Mountain, you know, like it's the same passion. It's the same, you know, it's the same level of experience that, you know, I try to bring to the table. And, you know, I exhaust myself in the process, but it's totally worth it. And then the universe rewards us with, you know, Suzette texting you saying, hey, you want to go to Vietnam?
I was like, so you want to do see? And you were all like, wait, what?
I really was. For context, it was like,
shockingly.
it was a super busy Tuesday morning, and I usually have multiple things going on a Tuesday morning, and it was extra busy, and I was extra foggy, and I'm like, Suze, are you offering me a trip to Vietnam? And she's like, yes, I am. And I'm like, all right, I'm pretty sure that's going to happen. Just, you know, we worked out the details, and, you know, and my goodness, the rewards, you know, like now we have a new, for us, it's going to be a new origin, you know, the experience, learning the culture gives such context to the teas, because I think I said to you, and I think I was also talking with Olga, where, you know, some of the things that I saw when we were initially tasting some of these Vietnamese teas, I would have discounted as a flaw from other origins. And, but knowing the culture, getting the context, you know, spending the night with the Zhao people, like, you understand where this tea is coming from and why it's processed the way it is. And, you know, and that gives it provenance, you know, and terroir, and, you know, all those things that we seek in something super good. And, you know, so my goodness, you know, I still my little basket.
And I have mine here on the windowsill too.
The gifts, everything that we got, you know, but the biggest gift really are the friendships that we now have. And, you know, that is, that's amazing.
Yeah. And greater understanding too, like you say, like that's really, you know, it's hard to think of a time where people might have in other areas discounted, you know, Japanese teas or matcha or something, and just say like, why does this taste like ocean? Why is this seaweedy? You know, it's weird, right? And it's all about the context of the culture. And it's something that, you know, in classes for a long, long time, I've mentioned that sometimes even just having the cuisine from where something came from gives you that context. Like you know, people make the teas that go with what they, you know, are eating, that fit into their world, you know, largely speaking, because what's really special about tea compared to some other crops that are grown, even crops that people could be super, super passionate about, like coffee, you know, no doubt people who grow coffee, some of them can be really passionate about that. But with tea, this is part of identity for people. This is part of culture. And in some cases, from some origins, like especially China, given how just, you know, popular tea is there and expensive it is there, and same thing with Japan, it is like our privilege to be able to buy them, because they don't have to sell it to us. They do not have to, like, I've had conversations with producers from Korea who are just like, why would I bother? Like, I don't need to sell abroad. Everyone buys it here. You know, so it's just like our privilege that we can buy them, you know. It's when you understand that people are making the tea that tastes good for them and that tastes good for what fits in their world, then you get it. It's just like this like little lock is opened and it makes sense all of a sudden, you know. And so sometimes you encounter teas like, you know, the ones from Vietnam have just such a particular character to them. But when you have the greater understanding of it, it completely makes sense. And you wouldn't have it any other way. You wouldn't want it to taste just like, you know, classic Chinese teas, because then it doesn't really feel like it's from somewhere that's different. And it is from somewhere that is entirely different.
It's true. I was blown away by the terroir and the difference and the things that we get out of these teas. And I wasn't expecting that. I expected some subtle differences. I expected, you know, I you know, when we went to the research institute, you know, I had some concerns about, you know, they were talking about how historically they did a lot of commodity tea. And I was like, oh, okay, you know, whatever. We'll see, you know, and then, you know, but then when, you know, we kind of got more involved in the tea at large, it was really such a pleasant surprise, you know, to get all these differences and all these amazing things. And then to have it in the context of the culture and the food. And, you know, and we got to have different types of food. We had food in Hanoi that was, you know, one sort of category. And then we had food in the mountains that was a completely different thing. And, you know, and so when you understand, like you said, you know, what they normally consume, then their tea makes sense, or how they make it, because, you know, they don't have big fancy dryers like they do in some of the more developed areas, or, you know, like the competitor in the Tea Masters Cup, who literally like served us tea that was in the pairing competition that was from her family's tea garden that she made herself. Like, whoa. You know, like that is crazy. And, you know, the beauty of that. And then, of course, you know, her instincts to pair it with what she did, you know, that was just amazing. And
her own homemade tea cake.
And her carefully cut dragon fruit, where she left enough of the rind so you wouldn't get your fingers messy while you were eating it. And then you took a bite of the dragon fruit, and the tea made the dragon fruit flavor explode on your palate. And they just, you know, it was just like two arias, like riffing off of each other, like, you know, like, or like two amazing guitar solos if you're a rock fan. Just and it was just amazing. And I was just like, what is happening, you know? And you know, the beauty of those discoveries, you know, memories for a lifetime for sure. And you know, of course, getting to spend it with one of my best friends. It's amazing.
Oh. So what do you think comes next for Master's Teas? So like Vietnam being added as an origin, what other like ideas do you have cooking, if you're able to say?
I don't even know that we're cooking anything. I think we are riding the tea wave, you know, like we're like this red tea came to us because now our, you know, our friends in Taiwan, I mean, they know that we're like looking for these things. And so we don't have to be super. I mean, last year we had to say, send us your good stuff. No, we mean your really good stuff. No, we mean your real stuff, you know, and
the like, stuff that you may not have a price for. Do it, yes.
The price point is now here, and they were shocked, you know. So I think that one of my things is I would like to expand further in some of the Japan teas that we haven't dabbled in. We had some really great shincha, but there's a lot on the table there for sure. And, you know, so there's a lot to expand there. Vietnam's wide open, you know, like I only tasted a corner of what they have to offer. And so, sorry, there was a gnat. And, stop it. But, and then, you know, obviously other teas from other areas, you know, whatever's good and whatever I see the rest of us tea freaks getting excited about, I want to know about. And, you know, we'll further explore these tiny villages in China, you know, because you just never know what they have. But, you know, that I think we're just riding the wave. Now that word is sort of out with our contacts that we are looking for these small lots and that we're open to, you know, the higher priced items, I think that's going to open up a lot of doors for us. And we'll wait and see. And then, you know, like in this case, we're pursuing the Vietnam teas. And I think next spring when, you know, when time comes, we'll get a little bit more involved in some Japan things because we definitely have a lot on the table there. And, you know, and we'll see. I think that I think Darjeeling had a really rough harvest year. And so there's some things there that I would like to explore as well. And there's some small lot handcrafted things that are sort of experimental, and I would love to support that. And, you know, the beauty of what we're able to do is because of Adagio's visibility, I think that we can bring attention, you know, to things like Vietnam teas and to these smaller cultivars or these smaller origins or these smaller producers. And so if we can sort of benefit folks that way, then it's, you know, it's a feel good thing for me because, you know, I feel like tea has given me so much. And it's taken some stuff too, but, you know, it's given me so much. I have a whole room that is just completely everything tea and Adagio related. So it's occupying space literally in my life and my home. And, you know, but, you know, overall tea has given me way more than I can give back. So, you know, I hope to continue to do that. And
we have a vote here for Colombia for Bataco's white tea. Just for interest, yes. Right. So yeah, I think there's so many really special origins that it could be highlighted, even if it's just like one tea, you know.
Good point. That is a good point. I will have to look into that because I think that is fairly. I have their contact info.
Sweet.
Yeah. All right.
See, getting work done here this Saturday morning.
I know.
But good work. Happy work.
Yeah. I even cleared out some spam while I was waiting. So always makes Monday easier, you know.
Cool. Yeah, you know, why not?
Yeah, I'm like, let me just clear this out. That'll annoy me on Monday. But what else would you like to see? You know, like what else, you know, where do you think we should poke?
My suggestion actually, I would vote for Malawi. I really love their teas. Like they got some beautiful teas. So that would be, I tend to be a champion of the lesser known origins or the lesser known teas, not necessarily as like by contrast to well-known places, always like deliberate, but just because those teas need attention and they get overlooked, and people they're not expecting it. And also I find that it can help you understand context for greater origins more. Like what's really special, for example, about Vietnam is that so much of their tea development came directly from China and also came from Taiwan, and when you see that and you see that play out in their teas, it makes so much more sense. It's really cool.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So I like that. I like that way of learning about tea, and the same thing like with Nepal, right? You understand Nepal's context for tea when you see it side by side with Darjeeling's, and they started from completely different histories with tea. Nepal's plants were gifted to them. So like it's a very a more complete way of understanding regions of tea in a really holistic way. And I find that really cool. I think Korea is another great example of one that folks overlook a lot. It has such a long history with tea.
It does.
That's gotten interrupted many times over history just because of, conflict, occupation, things like that. And it's survived still.
It's true. With whatever else humans do on the planet, if they can just have a cup of tea, I think it really settles things down. But it's really a trip around the world, where you can explore the world through tea. We try to, find bits of culture and sort of, kind of convey that in our descriptions of why it's different. But when you get to go, it's always super enlightening, as like just watching, Vietnam has had a lot of influence from outside forces, but there's things, when it comes to their tea ceremony, like I think you were saying that it was, very reminiscent of Korean, but, when it came to the tea itself, it definitely was unique, far and away, but it's also, if you can enjoy those subtleties between, how they're using it, versus, the other, big tea growing regions, it's really a great way to explore. And I'm always open, especially on a personal level, I'm always open to try these new things. And then if we can, find ways to work it out, or if we can find a good supplier or something like that, then, Master's Teas makes this on the table. We don't have to commit to like a container load, or we don't have to try to get a container load out of Malawi, like if we can FedEx it.
Because that would be really difficult.
Yeah. We used to get some stuff from Africa, and it was just murder. And so it just didn't make sense. But, maybe we didn't have the audience for it at Adagio Prime. But, in this context, I believe that we do. And so we can take more risks because the risks are minor, and we'll see how it goes. It still has a lot of, I think we're just getting there as far as people noticing that we have teas now. So, I think
it's been really great. Like I've been watching just the comments and the shares and stuff, and it's been really, really great. So, congratulations. That's awesome.
Thank you. I just feel so
little project, and now it's like, here it is.
Yeah, you just never know. Like, I always feel like I'm in a rush because I think this thing is going to just blow up, and then it doesn't blow up, and then you breathe and you kind of like, all right, move on to other projects. Let's just go tackle the rest of the thing. And then the next thing you know, the little project is now blooming. It's like plants, like all right, I'm just going to let it alone. And the next thing you know, it's blooming, and you're like, wow. So it's really good to see. And, we're getting some feedback here, and it just warms my heart to know that the teas are being appreciated and that we've chosen wisely, because, it's risky. The stressful side of the tea industry that people don't, they think we're having tea parties all day, but the stressful part is really, not knowing if your tea that you selected or that you've blended or whatever is going to work. And so, there's always like that little feeling in here where it's like, all right, we could fall on our face,
right?
But it's worth the risk, it's worth it. These teas need to be seen. Yes,
they do. And thank you for having that space for them too, for like making that. It's yeah, it's really special to be able to say, yay, now there's like yet another advocate for teas like this. And I think that's really awesome.
Yeah. And people need them. There are people who really need to like know like that this thing exists in the world, because like I said before, it's, there are things in life that are enhancing. So if you're having a terrible day, if things aren't going your way, you're feeling blue, you're feeling off, turning to something that is inherently life enhancing, I believe can help you in those moments, whether it's our fuzzy plushes, or whether it's like, a pet that's, like a woofer, or, something like that. Woof! And, or if it's like a good piece of chocolate, or if it's a really, if your thing is burgers, it's a really great burger, or if it's, a fabulous tea, then those things remind you like, yes, it is good to be alive. Let's keep going. And people need that,
Most definitely. Well, thank you so much for joining, and hope to have you back next year. I like we can make this like an annual thing.
I would love that.
What can we talk about next year?
I'm sure we'll have plenty of fodder.
We'll have plenty. Like if we did an interview last year that was talking about the role of creativity in our work, and we were doing some live art. Cynthia was painting, and I was making like little fuzzy plush things. It was pretty nerdy and cool.
Just be careful. Hanging out with Suzette, you end up with lots of plush.
Yes. Oh my goodness, it's so cute. I can't even take it. Well, thank you, C. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Thank you.
You're most welcome. And thanks, folks, for tuning in and for participating in our interview here. So, like I mentioned before at the very beginning of the broadcast here, if you're interested in learning more about tea classes and taking part in some of our discussions here and learning about tea in a really just at your own pace way, however fits your life, patreon.com/beingtea is where you can find information about my tea classes and how you can sign up. The class is coming up this month. I believe next weekend. Our first workshop for October is actually about the topic that we were talking about today in the interview with Cynthia, buying tea online. A little bit more about the ins and outs of how you can do that smartly as a consumer. I'll share some tips that I've learned over the years about how I buy tea online and things that you can look for. And then our tea meditation class is going to be focused about teas for the autumn season. Not only teas that are made in the autumn, but teas that are just really by category appropriate to drink for the autumn season that really help support us in these months of transition where it's hot, cold, and windy. And, everything's just kind of in movement all the time. And it's a bit of a different season than the summer. So if you're curious, you can also send me a note directly, either on Instagram or reach out at Being Tea. I'm also available at hello@beingtea.com. Happy to answer any questions that you have. But otherwise, check out patreon.com/beingtea for more information about classes. And otherwise, I will see you next month for our next interview, which features the wonderful Monica from Windy Hollow Tea Farm in Scotland. So like we're getting around the world here. Thanks so much. And I will see you guys soon.